Hey, this is Stefan from Only Comic Books. Been a fan of the Comics Alternative for a while now, and appreciate the stellar quality. Hopefully my Patreon support can contribute to a new trade.
This is the Comics Alternative, on location at the Wizard World Austin Con 2015. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Comics Alternative on location. I'm Derek.
And I'm Andy, and we're two guys with PhDs talking about comics.
And this past weekend, I attended the Wizard World Austin Con, and while I was there, I talked with a variety of creators and, in fact, other podcasters as well. But before we get to those interviews, we want to let everyone know that this episode of the Comics Alternative on location is brought to you by the great folks at Discount Comic Book Service. On or off location, they're the place to go. Check out their website, dcbservice.com, for all of your comics pre-ordering needs. There you're going to find all DC, Marvel, Image, and Dark Horse titles at 40% off of the cover price if you pre-order. For all of the other publishers, you'll find that those discounts are 20 to 35% off of the cover price. And every single month, you're going to find some wonderful specials. Sometimes those specials will be at 45% off cover price. Sometimes it'll go up to 50% off cover price. And often you're going to find discounts that are higher than that.
That's right. And so when you go to DCB Service, check out their specials for the month of November. They'll be available at dcbservice.com.
That's right. They always have different, wide variety of specials. You got to check them out this month to see what those specials are. That's their website, dcbservice.com. Be sure to go there for all of your comics pre-ordering needs. And after you do get your comics there, please be sure to send them an email and tell them that the two guys with PhDs sent you.
That's right.
Andy, I had a pretty good time going down to the Austin Wizard World Con. I said pretty good time because on Friday we had terrible flooding weather that swept through this part of Texas. And so I got down there quite a bit later than I anticipated. But I had a good solid Saturday at the con.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And while I was there, I talked to several people. In fact, Action Lab had this gigantic area with a lot of their comics there, and I talked with Daniela there. She was the representative, was giving me some lowdown on what's going on at Action Lab. I also talked to Jen and Angela. They're a couple of podcasters who've been going at it for quite a number of years with a show called Anomaly, and so I talked with them about what they do and compared it to what we do on the Comics Alternative. I also talked with Victor Dandridge. He is the editor-in-chief of a small press called Vantage In-House. I spoke with a number of students there at University of Texas who are part of the Daily Texan, which has quite a standing in comics history. I also spoke with Jonathan Hennessy. His new book, Comic Book Story of Beer, just recently came out. And then I also talked with Austin and Robert of Bogus World Books and about some of the titles that they put out. So let's go ahead and listen to some of those conversations.
Let's do it.
This is Wizard World Austin, the 2015 con, and I'm here at the Action Lab area because it's more than just a table. It's an Action Lab area with Danielle. Danielle, how are things going?
It's going fantastic. Thank you. How's it going for you, actually?
I just got here.
Oh, well, then it's going great for you.
Yes. Now you were here yesterday. How was the attendance yesterday with all of the bad weather?
It actually wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. We had quite a few people come in later on in the day when the rain slowed down, so it was a good turnout last night.
Now, I don't know if I remember going to a comics convention and seeing this large of an Action Lab setup. Do you guys go to either Wizard World or other cons and do this often?
Yes, actually. We are with every Wizard World convention that's been going through the U.S. since Pittsburgh, and I do believe it was the beginning of September. And we do other cons. We're in New York Comic-Con. We're in San Diego Comic-Con. We hit Baltimore. We do the Scholastic everything. So we're actually in every show we can possibly get somebody at this point.
Well, I guess I overlooked you last year then when I came to Austin.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, we're a small company. We actually only started about 5 years ago, so we're still expanding people. So the more people we get, the more cons we get to go to.
Well, one of the things I had mentioned to you before we started recording was that we've talked about a number of your titles on the Comics Alternative podcast. I mean, we've had both Jeremy Whitley and Jamal Igle on for interviews at different times, and we've also talked not only about their books, but some of the other titles, and I'm looking here at the table. One of our favorites from a few years ago, and I'm glad to see is still around, is Pirate Eye. And so what can you tell us about that, or even some of the other titles here at the table?
Well, actually, I have yet to read Pirate Eye at this point, because I'm a student, so I'm actually doing this on my weekends. But a couple of the other comics that we have Hero Cats, which it's kind of neat. Everybody loves cats at this point, so it's following their adventures, keeping the city safe. And we have Harold, which is Lovecraft and Tesla. And it's my personal favorite at this point. It chronicles their travels through dealing with the Elder Gods and finding out how to keep the world under control, so to speak. And it's just an absolute delight to read at this point. If you're a Lovecraft fan, if you're a Tesla fan, if you just like the steampunk era at this point, you would love this comic. So. But we have Gronk, we have Little Monsters.
And Gronk was Free Comic Book Day.
Yes.
Title, right?
Yes, it was. And it actually started off as a webcomic. Katie Cook is who does it. And she picked up with us, I think maybe about 6-7 months ago. And we're up to volume 4 with her, and she's just an absolute delight to work with. She's a very, very sweet lady. Between Gronk and My Little Pony, she's just amazing.
Oh, yeah. And I've also noticed that a lot of people seem to be drawn to Vamplets, yeah. We even talked about that at one point, I think a couple of Halloween episodes ago, but that's drawing a lot of traffic, I see.
Yes, actually, a lot of the kids think Monster High, and they see vampire and werewolf babies and little, Cyclops babies, and they pretty much go insane, which is nice for me because I do the same thing at 30.
Well, one of the things I think is curious, maybe ironic, I don't know, is the fact that at the big setup, and this is not a video podcast, we can't show it, but basically you have a square made up of a total of how many tables?
Actually, it's technically, I do believe it's 8.
So yeah, on one side are almost entirely Vamplets, and then right next to that is your more adult material, the Danger Zone stuff.
Yes, I try to make sure that it's in the back. I color code my tables, so when it's red, when kids start to go back there, I'm like, oh no, you want to look at the Vamplets, and then I send the adults, I send their parents around the corner, and I try to keep it separate. That way no one really gets offended at this point.
Because you don't want to mix up Vamplets with Zombie Tramp.
Yeah, most definitely not. That's a big leap.
Interestingly enough, on last week's Halloween episode, we do a Halloween episode every year, we talked about this year's Halloween Zombie Tramp.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's, you know what, I have yet to read this one too. I've been traveling with the show, so... But I do know that we're coming out with, the next one is coming out, I think, this next month. And we do variant covers for each one. We do the six covers for each issue at this point.
Some adult.
Yes, some of them are adult. Some of them should be adult, but they're considered the okay covers, you know what I mean? Not the risque ones, but... I question that at this point, too. But honestly, I think we're in Detroit, and we're doing... now we're doing Zombie Tramp versus Vampblade. So that's just an absolute hoot at this point.
And, one of the things I've noticed, not only with Action Lab in general, but I think even specifically with your Danger Zone line, you guys have been growing almost exponentially, it seems, over the past year and a half.
Yes, we've had a lot of people, creators come in with us and start, pitch their idea, and basically we've worked with them, found them artists if need be, and we're just taking off with it, both sides, honestly. With just the Action Lab itself, we're in the Scholastic Book Fairs now. With the Danger Zone, we've actually got a couple awards for people. I do believe Zombie Tramp's been nominated for a couple things at this point, which is hilarious because Zombie Tramp. But that's still it's an awesome comic. You like zombies and dark humor, it's the best place for you to be.
Now, what other comics, new or otherwise, may be in the works for Action Lab?
Well, we are doing one. I do believe it's starting, I think, in January. It's called Kingdom Bum, and it's kind of like Game of Thrones, but with bums instead.
Bums?
Bums, like the homeless bums people. You know what I mean? So it's actually really, really funny. They basically you can tell who those bums belong to by their thumbs, whether they have them or not.
Okay.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, if you watch Game of Thrones, you'll understand the concept. But it's just like a gigantic cardboard village at this point. Yeah, so.
And that's coming out in January.
I do believe so, yes.
Well, Danielle, thank you very much for taking the time and talking with us for the podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate you stopping and talking with me.
I'm standing in front of Jen and Angela. They are the co-hosts of another podcast called Anomaly. And I wonder if you guys could introduce me and our listeners to what you do.
Sure. Well, we are a Geek Girl show. We feature topics on like Star Wars, Star Trek, Doctor Who, cons, anything geek related.
Lord of the Rings, Ren Fest, so we do sci-fi and fantasy.
And we report on the conventions that we go to as well. So.
We're very excited about Star Wars this year. That's why we're dressed this way.
Yeah.
Through the power of radio, you can see that.
We also have a blog that we post to every 3 or 4 days. And a range of topics. We have a
great staff.
Yeah, great staff of writers that are constantly like pushing the envelope of topics.
Yep.
So.
And the cool thing about the writers that we have, and also some other contributors to our show, and the sister podcasts we have, and our other people we collaborate with, is that if there's something we personally don't cover, we know someone who does. And so it's a really great resource. The Anomaly community is really awesome too. Our Anomaly group page has become such a neat thing because it's almost my go-to geek news, the Anomaly Facebook group page, for a strange reason. People just post all kinds of cool stuff there, and it is so active. I'm sure there's stuff going up right now we don't know about because we're not online. So, yeah, Anomaly has started as a podcast but has become a community, and that's been really cool.
Yes.
Now, you were telling me before I started recording that you guys have been around since 2007?
Yes, we have.
Yeah. We used to post monthly. We used to say sometimes monthly, but always entertaining Anomaly podcast. But then we became more regular. Now we're weekly. We post once a week, and we alternate with our sister show, which is on our feed called Anomaly Supplemental. So they cover like Doctor Who and things that we can't get to.
Musicals, and the thing is, just like anyone else, we can't cover everything, and we don't have interest in every single thing. So it was really exciting because Doctor Who's huge right now, and it's not something Jen and I have been able to watch. And so Casey and Sue have been covering that, and it's been really great.
Yeah.
Now, did it start off back in 2007 with just the two of you and then expand from there?
Yeah. Yeah, we worked together, or we used to, and we were having incredibly geeky conversations at work and listening to that man's podcast,
yes,
Rico from Treks and Sci-Fi, and he encouraged us to start our own show when we became members of his forum and started making friends with everyone there, and they were like, hey, you guys should have a podcast. And we're like, you're right, we should be sharing this with the world.
Yes, so we started doing that, and then when our lives got a little more hectic, Casey and Sue were so gracious to come on and talk to us. They started as contributors to our forum and our Facebook group, and then they said, hey, we would be glad to come and do a show with you guys. So we did a few shows with them, like with all four of us, and they guested, and then they started doing their own show. So it's really, really great.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by this and asking you guys these questions as a fellow podcaster because we started in a similar manner. My regular co-host Andy Konka and I mean, we're both comic scholars, and we decided to do a podcast that would have kind of a scholarly approach without being academic or pedantic. And so our tagline is two guys with PhDs talking about comics. And we started off with a weekly and just two of us, and over the past 3 years, we've grown in ways that you guys were just describing to me that you've really grown. So I'm excited about the possibility that we could get as large, or at least as ambitious as what you do.
Yeah, It's so funny that you say that because I actually have a master's degree in theater history, in which I always think of that degree as it's like the history of entertainment. And when we started doing the show, I used to comment to Jen, I was like, when I prepare for a show, I feel like I'm writing a research paper sometimes, because you talk about what other people have said and then you say, this is how I feel about this. It feels like a scholarly work. So it's so funny to me to hear you guys say that.
Sometimes we treat our episodes like thesis topics.
We do.
We kind of think about, a different angle on something that we're reviewing or whatever.
Yeah, we really try to add something new because there are a lot of podcasts out there and blogs and people talking about stuff. So we really try to look really hard at what everybody else is doing and try our best to make sure that we are adding something unique to the discussion. One of my favorite things that one of our first couple of years, we did an experiment where we showed a woman that we knew we worked with at work who had not a nerd at all, and she had never seen Star Wars. And so instead of us just commentary on Star Wars, we had her watch it and then interviewed her about it on what she thought. And it ended up very interesting for her and for us. So it's those kind of things we like to experiment with. So it's not just us talking about what we like and didn't like about a show.
And another angle or a facet to your podcast that you mentioned when we first started talking was the fact that it's just women who are the co-hosts.
Yes.
So now, was that something that you made a decision on from the beginning, or did it evolve in that manner?
Well, when we were podcasting, when we started back in the day, there weren't a lot of women podcasters, and there was a lot.
The ones
less.
we did, I'll say it now since it's been so many years, but the ones we did find that were women were not approaching the topics the way we wanted to hear, not the ways the guys were. To be honest, it wasn't the scholarly discussions. It was more like, oh, I like that dress, and not that there's not room for that, which there totally is. We do that too, but it was just that. It was very like giggly and girly and flirty and oh, that guy's cute. And we do talk like that sometimes because it's supposed to be fun. But we wanted to get deeper into it. We wanted to have philosophical discussions about these things that we love from a different angle instead of just talking about it and what we think,
Yeah, and also, like, the name of our podcast is Anomaly, which represents what used to be uncommon, which is women who are geeks, who are, we fly low under the radar. A lot of times people don't know that we're into geek stuff. And that used to be more common than it is now. We've realized now that everybody, it's like a big thing. So
it's switched since we started, and that women have gotten a lot more interested, and not just interested, but showing that they're interested in these things. I don't know that really interest has gotten bigger, but they feel more comfortable saying, hey, I'm a Star Wars fan too. I like comic books too, and it's okay to.
Yeah, and our audience is broad. It's not just for women. There's a lot of men that listen to our show. Mm-hmm. And also we have a token singularity, because that's what we call men. We call ourselves anomalies, which are women geeks, and men are singularities. And so we have one guy we call him our booth babe, who's over here today. Noah.
Yep. And he's the only male that writes on our blog as well. So.
Well, this is interesting. I mean, the way that you just described it, it's as if the culture has finally caught up to you guys.
Yeah, that's what we think.
So you've mentioned some of the social outlets, the podcast, the blog, the Facebook. Now, specifically, where can our listeners go to find out more about Anomaly?
We are on Stitcher Radio. We're on iTunes, Zune. You can find us and a whole lot of other places on anomalypodcast.com. So
you can stream our shows and read everything about us directly from our website. So we make that really, really easy for you. But like she said, also downloading it very easy on Twitter. Yeah, we're also on Twitter.
YouTube, our videos, we're covering the con, so a lot of our videos are going to go up there too. So we
will do what we call mini skirt casts, and we do them on video as well. And so in the middle of the week, if we have something we feel like we want to talk about, but it's not big enough for a podcast topic, and it's not long. Like, for instance, we've been kind of covering the lead up to the new Star Wars movie, and we don't really think that's worth an hour show, but it's definitely worth about a 5-10 minute little mini skirt podcast that we call it. So we don't shy away from the fact that we're girls. It is integral to the podcast, but it's not the only thing.
So all those places to find you, Jen and Angela, I want to thank you very much for taking the time and talking with the Comics Alternative.
Thank you. It's nice to meet you.
I'm here with Victor Dandridge. He is the president and editor-in-chief of Vantage In-House. Victor, how has the Wizard World Austin Con been going for you this weekend?
I have to admit, it started off a little wet, but it turned into something really, really nice.
What were the crowds like here yesterday?
You know what? Okay, so we really thought that this was going to be a dead fish of a show, but there was a lot of people here. Like, despite the rain, the flooding, and all that stuff, there was a lot of folks here, and they were buying, which was great.
Oh, that's good. I mean, I was going to get down here yesterday. I live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and I got here really late because it was even the interstates were closed.
That's what we heard. Like, I heard that Mike Tyson actually didn't make it in yesterday because he was stuck in Dallas and couldn't come down. Yeah.
Wow. So, but it's good to hear that the whole weekend has been successful for you. Now, when I first checked in and got my media pass, someone, I think her name was Abigail, and she said, someone that you specifically have to talk with, because I told her the focus of our podcast is Victor Dandridge. And so she said, go and talk with him. I'm not familiar with your work, and one of the things I'm hoping you can do is introduce me to your comics, your various titles, and then by doing so, educate our listeners.
Absolutely. Sweet Abby, I love her to death. My imprint, Vantage In-House Productions, or VIP Comics, what we aim to do is to take the small press mentality, but actually operate at a mainstream style level. So we're not necessarily trying to topple Marvel or DC or anything like that, but the quality of work that we put out is something that we feel is comparable and can stand up next to seminal works. That's something that we do. We have a thing that we do called Dare to Compare, and we take like known, loved, beloved titles and compare them to our books. So we're talking Dark Knight Returns, we're talking Kingdom Come, we're talking Spider-Man Blue, we're talking, all these different things that are hallmarks of the comic book medium, and saying, okay, we as small press creators, we can produce something that is on par creatively with those titles. And that's what our entire aim is.
Now, you were using in your comparisons the superhero genre. Do you primarily focus with heroic narratives, or do you do other genre stories as well?
Our aim is to always focus on heroic narratives in a different way. So, namely speaking, we have a book called The Trouble with Love. And this one is our most critically acclaimed title to date. It's a young adult title, and what we're dealing with is a Superman analog, absolutely tried and true. But the story itself is not fights and tights. It's not another hero versus another hero. In it, what we have is he's got a wife and a family, and he falls in love with someone else, and years later his son comes to him and wants to understand how he can make that choice. So we use superheroics as the backdrop for moral code or the backdrop of consideration, where he's like, you're supposed to be this good guy, but you're no better than, the people that you fight against. You're a liar, you cheated, all these different, aspects or components of the quote-unquote superhero mythos, but not directly tied into fighting, saving the day, putting away the bad guy. It's more of the, a status, setup, but then we actually have a tried and true, down-to-earth, rooted story that's more of a father-son relationship piece more than anything.
So you grounded in a world that your readers actually not only understand, but engage in every day.
Exactly. Something far more identifiable. It's not necessarily the sense of overt escapism, but kind of saying, hey, using this as a way to come through on a different perspective, to show you something that you might not have considered, even in your own sense of humanity. You've never considered that maybe this guy's not so much bad as just a person, and they made a choice, and that's sometimes what happens. So it's just kind of playing those things up.
Okay, now with Vantage In-House, how many titles do you have currently ongoing?
Currently, we have 6 titles out into the world that are comic book based. So we have all ages friendly with, wow, that just got crazy. We have all ages friendly with Wonder Care Presents The Kinderguardians, teen centric with Origins Unknown, young adult with The Trouble with Love, more mature with The Samaritan, Old Crazy and the 40 Ounces of Death, and a book that we don't readily keep in circulation right now called The Villain. So, yeah, we have a range of different things, 6 different titles there. We also have a novella, a prose novel piece called 8 Minutes, an anthology of the last 8 minutes of verse. So we're also playing around with regular books as well, as opposed to just comic books.
Oh, so you have a hand in things other than comics.
Absolutely. That's why it's Vantage In-House Productions and not Vantage In-House Comics, so we can do a wide range of things.
Now, how long have you had VIP?
5 years. We actually just celebrated 5 years of this being my full-time job on the 8th of October.
Okay, so take me through a little bit of your evolution. You said that this became your full-time job. You said you celebrated the 5-year anniversary. What were you doing before? How did things fall for you to where now this is your gig?
I actually worked for the state of Ohio. I worked for the Bureau of Workers' Compensation, and it was a good job, good money, good pay, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. Comic books have been my love for a very long time, and I've known that I wanted to do things in the comic book industry. So it was just a matter of really kind of nutting up and saying, I'm just going to do this. And so I cashed out my retirement and started my imprint, and it's been going strong since.
So, it's almost like a cliche, follow your dream, but that's what it was, and yours has been a success.
Absolutely, absolutely. I tell anybody, one of the biggest things that inspired me to do that step was Clerks 2 from Kevin Smith. And I tell him, I've even told him, I was like, this is my quick stop. That's what this whole thing is this is what I want to do, this is where I want to be, and I can wait for it to happen to me, or I can make it happen for myself. And here I am, 5 years later, celebrating its success.
Okay, so as the editor-in-chief, the man behind VIP, what is one of your biggest challenges after 5 years, juggling all the titles that you have going on right now?
Making sure people know about it. I can say that through the course of the 5 years, we've steadily produced content, but no one has really been fully aware. Only in certain pockets, certain regions does anyone know that these books exist. So that's the hardest part. In the market where there's so many different voices, so many different publishers, so many different creatives that are putting things out, to make yourself known is a little tough. Like I said, I'm a small press guy, so I operate with a limited budget. I don't have corporate funding or sponsorship. So I have to be as innovative as possible. One of the things that I've done is I've partnered with Wizard World, so I actually do all of their shows, and it allows for me to have direct point of contact sales and really get people to know about my books firsthand. They can see my passion, they can see what I'm interested in telling them about the stories. We can interact in a really cool way, and so that's how I'm growing my steady fan base right now. I've spent the last 2 years doing that, really specifically this year where we focus solely on the books, which has worked really, really well to really kind of push and say, hey, these books exist and you want to read them, and here's why.
So in addition to Wizard World, what other kind of distribution relationships do you have with VIP?
Specifically, we do wholesale sales through retailers. I will tell you, I don't do consignment, and that's obviously a little off-putting to some retailers because they're like, well, this is how I do independence, and that's fair. It's not how I do things as an independent, because what I demand is, if you're going to carry my product, I need you to invest in me. I had to invest to make these books happen. I need you to invest in me. So yes, it's just going to be wholesale pricing, but I need you to be willing to put down something, so that way I know that my books aren't just fodder for your shelves. They're not just going to sit up there and collect dust and things like that. I want you to be actively selling them just as much as I am. I find it a privilege to be able to put this stuff out there, and I need to make sure that you're welcoming that same privilege if it goes to your store, because I'm aiming to put things out there that I think will enrich, that will build your customer base. So if you're not willing to put in on it, then I'm not willing to give it to you. That's kind of me.
Any plans on something like, let's say, Diamond distribution, nationwide exposure?
Yes and no. I actually have a plan that I'm launching in 2016 that's tied into my circulation on the Wizard World circuit. Diamond is cool. It definitely is the industry standard for a measure of success. The thing for me, though, is as a small press guy, I'd still have to do a lot of legwork and promotional material all on my own without Diamond's assistance. It'd be a lot of work for myself. So if I'm going to do that, I still want to maintain as much financial response to that as possible. So if I have to still take on that level of work, I'm not really keen on splitting that bill with Diamond for them to actually send this stuff out. I'll do that myself, but still get more of the reward for having done that work.
Okay, so if our listeners want to find your various titles, how could they do so?
Definitely look for me online and social media. My website is vantageinhouse.blogspot.com. You can reach out to me via Twitter or Instagram at VantageInhouse. I pretty much brand everything that way. I'm also on Facebook. So anybody that wants to read anything, definitely drop me a line. I'll shoot you a digital copy, absolutely. If you want a free copy or a physical copy, we can PayPal. I'll send it to you in the mail. We're very open and conducive to using, the social media structure to get more people to know what we're doing.
So even if they can't find your titles in brick and mortar stores, they can reach out to you via the internet and get the comics that way.
Absolutely. If you are a big fan of digital distribution and you want to throw some financial support that way, there are other digital outlets that do carry it. There's Peep Game Comics with an X. That is a showcase specifically for African-American creators, which is really cool. I'm definitely on Comixology support, Amazon, Indie Planet, Comics Fix, all these different places that are available for you to actually purchase things that does, of course, funnel back and does support us financially.
Well, Victor, I want to thank you for taking the time and talking with the Comics Alternative today, and good luck with the rest of the con.
Thank you so very much.
I'm standing at the table of the Daily Texan, getting ready to talk with Amber, Melanie, and Isabella. Have you guys been here the entire time with the Daily Texan table, like at other Wizard World Austin events?
I know that we were here last year. I personally wasn't here with the Daily Texan, like at Austin Comic Con last year, but we've been here for like 2 years now. Yeah.
Because I don't remember you guys here last year, but I think that it's great that you have a table given the history of the Daily Texan and comics. So for those of our listeners who aren't familiar about what the Daily Texan is, and even more, perhaps more significantly, the kind of artists who have actually published and gotten their start in the Daily Texan, how would you introduce the paper to the uninitiated? Whoever wants to go. And I got three shy guests here.
Basically, it's a student-published magazine, and we're one of the first... Well, we're the only newspaper, right now, Jesus, that publishes content with comics that is just from students. A lot of other newspapers will run stuff, just rerun stuff from, like, New York Times or other newspapers, and we have completely original content every day.
So who are some of those artists who, let's say, were published in the paper and got the start there?
There's Berkeley Breathed, who is, like, pretty big in the comics universe.
Especially right now with Bloom County coming back.
Yep.
And what was the title of it? Was it Academic Waltz? Was that the strip that he ran in the Daily Texan?
I'm not personally familiar with his Daily Texan work, but I do know that he did come through here. So, he's a pretty cool dude, in my opinion.
A pretty cool dude?
Yep.
Does he, what, does he call you up? Do you guys talk? Do you chit-chat? Does he touch base with you?
We haven't had a lot of content. You know what? No.
That's okay. It's what gives the podcast its feeling of authenticity. I make mistakes all the time.
Well, I'm good at that, so...
So when you guys are talking, with the various artists, and what kind of relationship does the paper have with the creators themselves? I mean, their students, after they graduate, do they continue to write for the newspaper?
Not usually. It's usually just students that are, like, in session that semester. I mean, we don't really talk with a lot of the older people, but I kind of wish we did.
Sometimes, like, they'll just stop by the office just to see how things are doing and, like, what the paper's like. We actually had one of our old comics artists come by and, like, talk about what they're doing. Just talk with our artists.
We still remain friends with them. They just don't have a lot of, like, say in how the comic section is put out every day. We try and, like, get new perspectives on that with the new people coming in all the time.
Now, what kind of responsibilities do you guys individually have with the Daily Texan? What are your roles, in other words?
Well, we do comics, for one.
Okay, so you're the comics creators. I didn't know if you were editors or...
I technically am an associate editor, but I still put out comics. Basically, what I do is I go in once a week and put the page together, take all the comics that have been submitted and put them in the page, put together the Sudoku and the header, and we have a different header every day and all of that. But we still all submit comics at least once a week, most of us twice a week. And there's about 20 of us. 20 to 30?
I'd say about 25.
Yeah, 25.
Also, all of us are, like, technically senior artists, which have sort of more responsibilities in the office than, like...
Such as coming to Comic-Con.
Yes, coming to Comic-Con and, like, doing meeting stuff. So it's like you do comics, but it's like you're more involved than that generally. Like, it's more of a sort of community working together, I guess.
Well, since all of you are artists who publish in the Daily Texan, what is your work? What specifically are the comics that you guys create? Like, Isabella, what is your strip?
My strip is called Candlebot Comics, and it's basically just a weekly gag strip where I make a lot of really dumb jokes, sometimes just about, like, birds and pigeons, because that's one of my favorite things, or sometimes just about school in general.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which you can always laugh about.
Yeah, basically.
Well, what about your strips, guys?
I'm Pickles and Self-Hatred, and there's basically no theme to my strip, except for there's usually some sort of awful pun involved. So
Awful what?
awful puns.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, really bad ones.
And Amber, what is yours?
Well, I just want to say we have a bat in the office that sometimes we have to hit Melanie with, and we call it the Punisher. The Punisher, because she submits a lot of terrible, awful puns every weekend. My comic is called Living with Awkward. It's basically about the struggles of being an awkward college student, and it varies every week. I don't really have consistent characters, but I'm usually inspired by real-life events. Most of the time, awkward stuff that happens to me, and that's about it.
Now, is what kind of online component is there for the Daily Texan?
We have a Tumblr page that we usually post like every comic on. Like we post all the every day that we post the comics that come out for the paper that day, and that gets linked to both our Facebook and our Twitter pages as well. So it keeps everybody updated on all different types of social media.
Yeah. And there's the hard copy that I see over here on the table as well that people can grab. The students on campus.
Yeah. There's also I'm sorry. What was the question again?
No, the hard copy, I said you have a newspaper actual hard copy for the students on campus.
Yeah. They're kind of distributed just everywhere, not only on campus, but I've seen them off campus as well. There's a couple of Daily Texan just stands by my apartment complex too, so anybody can access them.
So if people who aren't from Austin, and probably the vast majority of our listeners are places other than Austin, I'm sure we have Austin listeners, and they want to find out more about the strips that you guys and others do in the Daily Texan, would they go to that Tumblr site? Would that be the best?
Go to dailytexannewspaper.com and look at the PDF issue on there. It's uploaded every day.
Okay.
So
Generally, if you want to look at just comics as opposed to just the paper, you can go to texancomics.tumblr.com.
Okay, so either of those ways would be a great way to get your daily dose of the Daily Texan. So Amber, Melanie, and Isabella, I want to thank you for talking with me and the Comics Alternative, and good luck with the rest of Wizard World.
Thanks. You too.
Thank you.
With me now is Jonathan Hennessy. He is one of the creators behind the comic book Story of Beer, the world's favorite beverage from 7000 BC to today's craft brewing revolution. And it is a comic. Jonathan, how are things with you?
Well, if I'm at a Comic-Con, it's always a good day. And I'm also a podcast fiend. So I just love, I love the form, I love the human voice, so I'm always honored to be asked to be on any podcast.
Oh, great. Well, maybe you'll have to start listening to the Comics Alternative now.
Absolutely.
Yes. So I've turned you on to the Comics Alternative. You can turn me on to your book on beer. So I had not seen this or heard of this before coming to the con today. So explain to me and also our listeners, what is the comic book Story of Beer?
Well, the comic book Story of Beer, which is a brand new graphic novel from the Penguin Random House imprint, 10-Speed Press. It's actually my third nonfiction graphic novel, but because it's about beer, it's the only one that anybody really cares about. And this got its start in 2010 when I was visiting a dear old friend, this colleague to my right over here. Of course, you at home, you on your exercycles can't see that. But I was visiting a good friend of mine from my teenage years, became a professional brewer. Actually went to Germany when we were teenagers as an exchange student, and then from there began to immerse himself in the sophisticated beer culture of Germany. Came back, was a professional brewer. Now, I did two books. One is an adaptation of the U.S. Constitution, and the other one is on the Gettysburg Address. It's really a story about the whole Civil War, but it uses the Gettysburg Address, the words of the Gettysburg Address, to tell the Civil War story. So I had kind of finished a draft of that. It was 2010, and I was visiting my friend Mike at the brewery where he was working as head brewer. Now, I walked in there thinking I knew something about beer. I walk around, think, oh, I've done so much research. I know things about, I'm sort of a jack of all trades, master of none. But I learned that, not only was I completely ignorant of where beer comes from and the nitty-gritty of how it's made, but it's got a fascinating history behind it, with a lot more, with tie-ins to cultures and parts of history that you don't expect to be researching when you're doing a book about beer. So I was so blown away and fascinated, the veil was lifting from my eyes, and I said, Mike, we have to collaborate on a book on the history of beer together. And like, I'm very evangelical about history. You know, I love those moments when you learn something about history, because I like to think of like the building blocks of the present time that we're all living in. The building blocks of what we live in are the past. And if you want to understand the present, if you want to make good choices about what you're doing, or even just you put your own personal crises in context and whatever we may be going through as a society in context, like history is perfect for that. And I love being able to teach people things, and I love having those aha moments when you're like, wow, that's why, for example, beer has hops in it, or why beer is considered a second-class drink next to wine. Why is beer considered a second-class drink next to wine? It has to do with the ancient Greeks and Romans. The ancient Greeks and Romans were wine lovers. Grapes grew everywhere in Greece and Italy, but so they were a wine-centric culture. But all of their enemies were beer drinkers. The barbarians in Northern Europe, the people of the kind of Anatolian heartland of like Turkey and the Middle East and North Africa. So the Romans and Greeks hated beer because all the people they were fighting drank it. And they are the founders of Western civilization, and we have sort of inherited their ideas about what is beautiful and true and just. So the arguable prejudice against beer we've inherited from them, and that was like, whoa! So
our elitism toward wine is based on Roman, Greek, past, and their understanding of their beverage of choice.
Exactly.
And that's one of the many things that you'll find in reading the comic book story of beer. In making this book, what are some other discoveries that you made that, you were saying earlier, I thought I knew about beer, but then once you got into this book, you didn't. What are some of those discoveries that you made?
Well, another thing is, so the United States is a country largely founded by the English and the Dutch. So for the beginning of our history, the time we were a new republic, our brewing traditions in America were the English and Dutch brewing traditions. But when you think of all the big beers that we have, when you think of all the great beer magnates and their names, Schlitz, Miller, Blatz, Anheuser, Busch, these are German names. So how did that get to be? In the year 1844 in Europe, basically on the European continent, there were a number of failed revolutions where, the old nobility was still very much in place, but people were starting to get educated and people were starting to get progressive, and they were, wanted to shake off the militarism and the royalty that had ruled them for so long. So in Germany, they tried doing that and failed. Now, this was kind of a middle-class revolution. And so the people, these, sort of better-off people were like, well, we are not staying here. Their revolution was forcibly put down. They pulled up stakes and came to America. And among that generation was all those names that I just mentioned. Blatz, Miller, Schaefer, Pabst. And that's so the great Dutch and English brewing traditions that ruled our country changed completely after 1844, and now it's all German.
Huh. Now, you were mentioning the historical links, obviously, to the comic book story of beer, but our revolutionary and pre-revolutionary past. Well, this brings me to your other works. Now, I think I told you before we started recording, I haven't read it, but I was familiar with the Gettysburg Address text,
right,
because I'd seen that solicited, but I did not know that this was the same author. So tell us a little bit about the Gettysburg and then the constitutional books.
Okay, so the U.S. Constitution, that was my first book, and that's just a direct adaptation of the document. So it's all 7 articles and all 27 amendments and what they mean, what the language means, like why we have them, and how they've been interpreted over time. So it basically just is the Constitution. And because this came out in 2008 before the election, and it was on the agenda of everyone involved with the project that it be an apolitical book. So it doesn't really, it's rah-rah Constitution, but it's not a right-wing, left-wing document, or at least I would say that it's not. But one of the interesting things I learned with doing a close study of the Constitution is about the amendments. So, we all know the First Amendment and a bunch of other ones, but when you look at why these amendments happened, especially after the first 10, because the first 10 happened in one big chunk, like right after the Constitution was ratified. But the other ones all were sort of responses to things that were happening in history at the time. So the Civil War, actually, we couldn't shake ourselves of the Civil War without amending the Constitution 3 times. So the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments are all directly grew out of the conflict of the Civil War. And that really fascinated me. And another thing that fascinated me about studying the Constitution was how much of our government, our form of government, is based on the existence of slavery. So we know that there's things like the 3/5 compromise in the original Constitution, and other things that were. But even the fact that we have a House and a Senate has to do with slavery. The reason that we have an electoral college has to do with slavery, and that was really fascinating to me. And we haven't shaken ourselves even of that legacy of it. So I felt like there needed to be a follow-up to that. And the Gettysburg Address seemed like a perfect companion, like a go-to thing to adapt. So the Gettysburg Address. It's a book that uses the words of Lincoln's famous speech, which is only 272 words long, but it breaks that up into 17 sections and uses those words to explore different parts of American history, and not just your typical beginning at the battle, at the firing on Fort Sumter and ending at Appomattox Courthouse, but it's really a Civil War story that begins when America begins and when the Gettysburg Address begins in 1776.
Now, you're working the historical documents, the Constitution, Gettysburg Address, and then with the beer book, your forte is history. Do you have any plans on, let's say, maybe other historical graphic novels, or maybe even work within comics that may be beyond history, maybe something like fiction or documentary or biography?
No, I appreciate you asking that. So I'm currently shopping a couple of different historical books that, the deals are maybe happening, maybe not, so I can't really talk about them, but they're similar to these other books, different things of pop culture and history and politics. But I actually did do and thank you for asking, because I don't get to talk about this very much. I had so much sort of extra. Actually, I came into comics because I had a story I wanted to tell that was also history-based, but it's a time travel story. But it's a time travel story that's sort of, I believe, done the way nobody else has ever done it before. Because in most time travel stories, you have one person or a group of people that are somehow empowered to travel through time. So they go to one destination, maybe multiple destinations. They have an adventure. They learn some big, lesson about destiny or fate or the nature of history, and then they come back, right? So they have control over where they go, and then they come back. But I thought, wouldn't it be great to tell a time travel story where everyone time traveled, not just a select group, but everyone, and no one had any control over where they ended up, and nobody could come back. So it's what happens basically if the past, present, and future all was sort of crunched together, killing almost everyone in the process, but leaving a few tens of thousands of survivors who might be from anywhere from the late 1500s to the 2200s. And that would allow me to mix comics, science fiction, and history, which are my 3 big loves when it comes to this. And that was called Apocalypse, epic, the word for a section of history, epic, Apocalypse, which was started being published last year by Legendary Comics, which is a little imprint that Legendary Pictures, which did Godzilla and the 300.
Oh, right. Yeah, they've worked. Grant Morrison's done work with them.
Yeah, of course. He's done Annihilator. Yeah. So I had a little limited series done with them that I'd love to finish someday. It needs to connect with a wider audience for that to ever happen. So.
Well, I like the Legendary stuff, what they're doing there, and so I'm definitely going to have to check that one out. Now, Jonathan, I'd be remiss if I didn't, in this conversation, ask you if there was a strategic purpose why you guys are not in Artist Alley area, but you're right across from Wild Bill's Old-Fashioned Soda Pop Company, and of course they sell Birch beer.
Right. Well, it's not alcoholic Birch beer, and as much as I would love to take credit for our beautiful placement here at Austin Comic Con at Wizard World Austin, this is purely an accident. But
really,
yeah, the fact that we're across from them is purely an accident. However, I am traveling with my co-author on the beer book, who is sort of new to comics, the same way I'm sort of new to. I've been drinking beer since before I was of legal drinking age, of course, but new to this level of involvement with beer. So I've got to see the beer world, he's gotten to see the comics world. It's been really fascinating to see how the two communities, even the festivals, both have cosplay, for example, now, because you get a lot of Lederhosen and St. Pauli girls at the big beer festivals, so that's fun. But we weren't at Artist Alley because, we're in the small press area, not that you'd really know it.
Yeah, well, I think it works to your advantage. People are thirsty, they're standing in line. Hey, they see a book on beer, why not pick it up? Yeah. Jonathan, thank you very much for taking the time and talking with the Comics Alternative.
Thank you very much. And if anybody wants to find out more about
Oh, yes. How could I forgot to ask.
No worries.
How can people find out about this? Your website, your social media contacts?
Just go with the website. We're on Twitter and stuff like that, but let's not beat a horse. thecomicbookstoryofbeer.com or jonathanhennessy.com.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. I'd love, again, podcast fiend.
Standing with me now are Austin and Robert. They are the creative minds behind Dr. Muscles. How has the Austin Wizard World Con been going for you this weekend?
It's been good so far. It's only a 2-day show this year, so there's no Sunday event. Yesterday was awful because of the rain, but Saturday has been pretty busy.
Now, I was asking you before we started the recording, tell me a little bit about Dr. Muscle, because I'm not familiar with your title. Tell me more about it, and by doing so, introduce our listeners to Dr. Muscles.
All right, well, Dr. Muscles is the smartest, strongest scientist in Philadelphia, and through an experiment that he was working on in the laboratory, he gets kind of like sucked into another dimension where he has to fight his way out using all of his muscles, including the biggest one of all,
his brain.
In this new world, he encounters wizards, rats, monsters. It's just a whole different, crazy world, very sci-fi action adventure that he's basically just trying to get back home. And it's award-winning. It's top-notch. It's the best book you'll ever read.
I see an award that's right up here at the table. It says Best Comic, Dr. Muscles 2014.
Oh, that's right.
Well, I believe the trophy speaks for itself. They don't just hand these things out to just anybody.
That's right. Gold does not lie, huh? Gold trophy.
So how long has Dr. Muscles been around?
We started it in 2011. Okay. And so we've just now wrapped up the entire series. We're about to print the omnibus that collects the entire 15-issue arc this next month. So November. BogusBooks.com, you can get the entire thing.
I was going to ask if our listeners wanted to find out more about the title. Is BogusBooks.com?
Absolutely. BogusBooks.com, you can find everything. We also have a new TV show called Bogus World, which is basically Wayne's World with comics. We shoot it in our basement on a green screen, as you can see right here.
This is an audio podcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so click the link. Yeah, you'll see the video link in the bottom of this article, but yes. Bogus World. We want to feature any. It's the chance for us to spotlight other up and coming indie comic publishers.
Because I was going to ask, is Dr. Muscles the only comic title with Bogus World, or are there others?
We've got a few. Tons. Yeah, we've got also Rad in Time, stands for Really Awesome Dudes in Time. It's essentially 3 cavemen steal a scientist's time machine and now travel throughout history, partying with different historical figures, getting into all sorts of shenanigans throughout history, time, and space. It's Bill and Ted meets Ninja Turtles.
Okay.
Yeah, super rad. It's real fun, real like campy time travel, because time travel in the late that we've seen, like we are big fans of time travel, but time travel is really hard. So if we decided, instead of getting so hard sci-fi with it, to have more fun with it, and a la Bill and Ted, like a Turtles in Time kind of thing. So it's a historical time travel with your new favorite friends.
Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah.
For adults.
Yeah.
Really awesome dudes.
And so you're multimedia now,
right.
Not just the comics, but with the show. Now, is this also on YouTube?
Yeah, it's on YouTube, which is the host of all of our videos, but we put them all on our website too. So at BogusBooks.com, you can find all of our videos as well.
Yep, BogusBooks.com.
We're about 4 episodes deep. We just put out a Halloween episode where we featured Stephen King's Creepshow. So if you're a fan of Creepshow, check it out.
If you're a fan of comics, check it out. If you're a fan of beers and hanging out in basements, check it out. Bogus Books.
That'll give you quite a wide audience.
Yes,
exactly.
We throw a wide net.
Well, guys, I thank you for taking the time and talking with the Comics Alternative for today, and good luck with the rest of our last day, Saturday, at Wizard World Austin.
That's right. Thanks for the opportunity. Baba Booey.
Baba Booey, Baba Booey. You keep reading them.
We'll keep drinking them.
So there you go. My time at Austin Wizard World Con.
That sounds like a fun show. I'm glad you got a chance to go and you stayed safe in the weather.
Yeah, it was a good time once I got down there. It was smaller than last year, and having nothing to do with the weather, but it just seemed to be a little more contained, with fewer people attending than last year. But still, it was a good attendance, and I'll probably do it again when they come back around next year, assuming that they'll do it next year. And if I do get down there, I'll try to talk with other creators, and we'll do another on-location show.
Sounds great.
And, you can find books from many of the creators that are at Wizard World at the website of our sponsor. That's Discount Comic Book Service. If you check out dcbservice.com, you're going to find great deals, no matter what you're looking for. And then after you do pre-order your comics there, get in touch with us and let us know what you're going to be reading. If you go to the website, comicsalternative.com, you're going to find on the right-hand side of your browser window a tab that says Send Voicemail. Click on that, and from the comfort of your own desktop or mobile device, you can send us a message through the wonders of SpeakPipe. It's really simple and easy to use. Or you can call us the old-fashioned way. Our phone number is 415-3-COMICS. That's 415-326-6427.
That's right. Or you can get a hold of us by email. We are two guys at comicsalternative.com. Or you can get a hold of us individually. I'm Andy at comicsalternative.com.
And I'm Derek at comicsalternative.com.
And we also have our Twitter feed where we announce new content to our podcast as well as updates to the blog. You can check out the Twitter feed at the number 2 guys with PhDs.
That's right. You can also find us on Facebook, on Tumblr, on Instagram, on Google+, on Pinterest, and on YouTube. You can subscribe to the podcast through iTunes. You can stream us on Stitcher. You can also find us on TuneIn, and you can find every single one of our episodes as well as our reviews and the comics-related commentary that we post on the blog. And that's at our website, comicsalternative.com.
That's right, all the ways to get a hold of us and let us know how we're doing.
Yeah, we'd like to hear from you. Until next time, I'm Derek.
And I'm Andy. See ya.